Rick Morgenstern. I'm the 2018 Area Steward, and I will be facilitating the meeting this evening. Welcome to our first area-wide Zoom meeting. We have, by the screen, we have 31 participants, which is awesome. And I think we have most of our communities well represented here tonight. I'm going to do a little let's get us in the mood piece here, so bear with me. In preparing for this meeting, I did a little research, and I figured out a little math. There are 71 million 18 to 64-year-old males alive in the U.S. So if we work for the next 50 years to initiate just 10% of that population, 7 million men, we would need to conduct 5,916 NWTAs per year, each year for the next 50 years to get all of them. 5,916 NWTAs a year. For 50 years to reach 10% of the adult male population. Imagine that.
Yeah, where's the challenge?
Do we appeal to 10% of the U.S. adult male population? Good question. In the young generation now, I think it's possible. Why? Why is that possible? In part because we've paved the way. All of us here on this meeting are one of 70,000 men who have done an NWTA. That's an amazing number, and it's 1% of the number I just mentioned. No one thought we'd be around 33 years. And 33 years later, here we sit. So, in my opinion, each one of us here has been blessed. Each one of us here has been given a precious gift. Bring back that powerful memory that you touched, that piece of joy during Steve's blessing, or whatever it was, the piece that you touched. Just bring that back for a second. How many men in your daily life have been given that gift? Imagine 7 million men getting that gift. For me, that's why we're here tonight. That's why we keep showing up. We know what that gift has done for us. In my view, we're a ripple on the shore. 70,000 of us are a ripple on the shore before the tide comes in. If we keep doing what we're doing, that tide that comes in are going to be our children, and their children. So what we do matters a lot. Welcome tonight. I'd like to introduce the members of the Stewardship Council briefly. If I miss any of you, just tell me. We got Jack Armstrong in the my top left corner. Jack is representing LKS, and he's also got a mentorship initiative going that Greg Capper will talk about later. We have Marco Cabrera, who is our new communications and IT man. He's taken on a huge role that we've desperately needed. Thank you, Marco. We got Greg Kapler, who is going to be taking the role of area steward after I step out. Greg's been with the council for 2-3 months now. We have Steve Pollack, our ritual elder, an elder in the Louisville community. We've got Joe Daly, who is co-coordinator of the iGroups. And he serves along with Don Reinhardt, who is co-coordinator of the iGroups. We have Mark Lopez, who is the liaison to the NWTA leader body from the Stewardship Council. We have David Bird, who's the steward emeritus. He is mentoring me in the position. We have Ed Barton, an elder who is outgoing as the National Elder Chair. We have Michael Rath, who represents the Equitable Community Initiative in our communities and sits on the council with us. And if I haven't forgotten anybody else, last but not least, we have Bob Oster. And I want to give a special shout out to Bob Oster. Bob's energy has carried this thing. He is a tireless warrior in this work. And I just want to honor you for a second, Bob, for everything you do for us in this area.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh,
A labor of love.
Uh-huh.
oh.
Thank you.
Keeps him out of trouble with his wife.
Tonight, we're going to have two presentations just to get us, kind of everybody grounded in what's happening in this thing we call the MidAmerica area. Greg Kapler is going to give an overview of operations and initiatives, operations in the council and in the area, and then initiatives that are going on all around the area. And then Bob Oster is going to have a segment on the roles that are currently available to be filled. One of the hopeful outcomes of this meeting is that we stimulate enough interest in you that you tell us at some point, either in this meeting or after, that you're ready to step up and give some hours to the area. And Bob's going to give you a real good indication of some ways you could do that. That's a really important thing tonight. After those presentations, we're going to have an interactive period. We don't want this to be a session where the guys who are not on the council are feeling talked at. We want it to be an organic, embracing, interactive meeting. So we've put aside 20 minutes, maybe more, for us to all interact with each other in dialogue. Please ask questions at any time during the presentations or after. We'll also have plenty of time for you to ask questions in that dialogue session. And if we run out of questions and we still have time, I'm going to cover a couple of topics and just get your input about it. One is this notion of what we call culture of invitation, which you may or may not have heard, that phrase floating around your communities. It's an important term. It means our future as far as I'm concerned. And then we're going to spend some time on how do we keep guys active in the work? And that's the general word for that is retention. And just throw around some ideas as a group. I want to encourage you to participate. I want to encourage you to stand up, make your voice heard here. This meeting belongs to all of us, and it's going to be a rich and rewarding meeting if we all participate. So I can't encourage you enough to do that. And we are ahead of time, gentlemen, which is great. That's it for my comments. Has everybody gotten the agenda? Everybody seen the agenda? Has anybody not seen the agenda? Because we can throw it up on screen real quick if you need us to.
It's Greg here. I'd like you to throw it up on the screen.
Okay. Marco, are you able to do that real quick? Marco's going to do that real quick, Greg.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
We'll leave it up for 30 seconds to a minute. Is that good? Okay. And Greg, if you need to say something, you're muted. Yeah.
Oh, I'm fine. Thank you for putting that up.
Muted me.
Okay. We can take it down?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, Marco.
You're welcome.
Okay. We're going to move on to our next item. Greg, area operations and initiatives.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that, Rick. Good evening, men. Couple things, just a sort of one overview, some overview comments I'd like to make. You know, on this council, we're working diligently under, well, with Bob and Rick and all the other members of the council to consolidate or to work as one operating unit, helping each other in our area. So that we can work with our developing areas, help our 4 legacy areas, Nashville, Kentucky, Louisville, Detroit, Central Great Lakes. And So we're looking at some modeling after some other areas of the country that have gone through the same thing we have with consolidation. So it's a daunting challenge, and this is a really good first step in that process. So what I'd like to do is talk about some of the initiatives that we have. First of all, I want to talk a little bit about what we've done in the recent past. One item is we did a rainbow gathering in Bedford recently. We had 65 men. There was a ST1 in Louisville where 22 men participated. Recently there was a Spirit Weekend in Derby, Indiana. So those are just a couple of the things that we've had going on in the past. There's a lot going on in the future, so we'll kind of start with that. We do have coming up in Toledo, we have an elders retreat on November 16 to 18, and we also have a leader training, LT1, coming up in Cleveland, November 9th through the 11th. Following that, as you should be all aware, we're having a couple of NWTAs, one in Fayette, Ohio, and the other one is in Bedford, Indiana. Both weekends are coming along. Just a quick update on enrollment. In the Ohio weekend, we have 11 initiates registered, and they've been coming in pretty hot and heavy lately. So we're expecting good things from that. Last I knew from the Indy weekend, we had there 12 men, but I'm not sure if there's anyone on the call that has an updated number for the Indiana weekend.
Actually, in Louisville.
Yeah, 13.
13? Okay. Oh, good. So that takes care of that. So both weekends are staffed and well underway. The Ohio weekend is October 12th through the 14th, and then the following week is 19th to 21 for the Louisville weekend. So, yeah, so I just want to mention that. A couple of other things that are going on. Well, we do, another thing I want to talk about, I'll give it on these events. We have an ST1 coming up in Michigan, probably the Ann Arbor area, first quarter 2019. And then also up here in Michigan, not sure where, we're going to do an ST2. That'll be in the second, or more likely the second quarter of 2019. So that's coming up. We're doing a IGFT training in Columbus, Ohio, late January 2019. So that I want to mention that to you. The other thing the council's really considering is a way to get the community together is to do what's called a Raw weekend in 2019, and we're sort of working on that. And that is an interesting weekend. I think it's a great way to bring men together and have just a really wonderful experience. And the other thing I want to mention is an initiative with MKP. We're doing a research study, and what we're doing is we're getting pre and post NWTA experiences from the participants. This data will be used to help MKP qualify for grants that we may be eligible for. So those are going to be handled. I'm going to be handling the Ohio weekend, and I don't know if it's Bob or somebody was handling the Bedford weekend, but they're both handled. Another thing I'd like to mention to you is that, and again, I know that Rick mentioned it, that Jack Armstrong is working on a mentoring initiative, sort of like succession planning. We've documents together. The council is considering that and refining that for our area. So that's kind of what I have with regards to initiatives. So you can tell there's quite a few things going on in the community, which is great. From an operational standpoint, working in the administrative aspect of this organization, we've done a few things. Bob Oser has been tireless in putting together with his team a who decides matrix. And what that is, it's a matrix that's available to all the men in the community, and it kind of outlines for all the different activities from selecting NWTAs to putting on public events to a host of things, who in the community has responsibility of and authority for those particular, and who makes, like, who decides, and who gets support, and who gets informed.
You mean area,
Yeah.
correct?
Yes.
Using the word community, but let's keep terminology straight. It's the area.
Right. Okay.
I choose.
Thanks, Ed. Yeah. Thank you, Ed. Yeah. So in our area, so for all the activities, and some in this matrix, it may be some community things too that tells you who in your community, but as well as in the entire area. So I just want to make sure that, you know that's available. It's been drafted and approved. Other details about the some things in the budget area, and I'm going to turn some of this over to Bob for a couple pieces of information. So far this year, from January 1st to August 31st of 18, we've had total income of about $78,000, and we've had expenses at $67,000, which leaves us about $11,000 surplus year to date. And I understand, talking with Rick earlier, or Bob earlier, that it looks like there will be additional reserves as we move forward for the September 30th results. And we've got we do have a budget, and I know Bob works very tireless on that and presenting that, keeping that straight for us. And so it all looks well. And I guess, Bob, if you could, if you happen to know what what our reserve is in the bank currently.
Well, the only figure I have is that August 31st figure, which is, we were positive $11,194.
Okay, got it. That's what I thought, but I wanted just to clarify that. So those are the highlights that I have around operations and initiatives, and I wonder if anybody has any questions for me. I'd be glad to try to answer them.
It's Greg here. I wanted to ask you about IGFT. Is that iGroup facilitation training?
It is.
Okay. And can you tell me a little bit about it? I know we're on a schedule here, but.
I'm sorry. Come back, Greg.
Yeah. Could you tell me a little bit about, again, where it will be and what it entails?
Well, it's going to be held in Columbus, Ohio, and it's going to be, we don't have a date, but it will be late January 2019. And, obviously there's initiatives, it's iGroup facilitation, helping facilitate processes within the iGroup, and how to conduct an effective iGroup meeting.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Greg, can I add that the page there's a page that will further describe IGFT training somewhere on MKP Connect. Some kind of search will get you there, I'm sure.
Sure. Yeah. Course description. Yeah. Hey, any other questions? All right, good. Well, with that, then I'm going to turn this over to you, Bob.
Okie dokie. So one of the things that Rick asked me to talk about was, the people in the organization. If we're going to be a successful area, we've got to have people who are willing to do a little bit of work Right now, we have folks in spots, but we're rather thin in some spots. So, it makes sense to me. For example, our area steward right now is Rick Morgenstern. Greg Kapler has stepped up, and he's going to be our steward next year. What we would like to see is a similar scenario with all the positions we have on the MidAmerica Area Stewardship Council. So, to continue to have a strong area, we've got to have a continuous flow of people. It's sort of like you're in a position and somebody is sort of mentoring with you. They're learning the job and they take over next year. That's an ideal situation. Then we've got other jobs, for example, like the area I group coordinators. So right now, Don Reinhardt and Joe Daly are in that spot. They're kind of co-coordinators. Ideally, every community should have someone who works with those two guys to improve, the I group, in that community. So build it, get them stronger. It's about growth and support of the quality of the I groups. If we have quality I groups in every community, my belief is that people will stay around. They're getting something out of the I group. So, if the I group is sort of wishy-washy, not very effective, people aren't going to stay around. So we're looking for, someone from every community who would work with Don and Joe to improve our I groups. And we can bring in things like the IGFT, to help people with that kind of thing. I don't know, I'm probably speaking to the choir for the most part of the guys that are here, but if you've got some time and, Pitt or I groups speak to you, then that would be an opportunity for you to step up and learn a little more about I groups and what happens. So in the last 2 years, I've been the area administrator. I'm not sure who's going to do that next year, but we should have somebody in the wings. I've done the area finance for 2 years now. It's all learnable, and if you have any interest in either one of those areas, you could step up. There's only a couple of spots where we don't have anybody, or at least there's not a lot of consistency there. So, for example, the young warrior coordinator. We sort of have one and we sort of don't. So, we need a little more commitment around the young warriors. That can be a vibrant part of the community. So we'd like somebody to step up full time and be the area young warrior coordinator. The other team that we don't have somebody on is the next level trainings. So Greg talked about a bunch of next level trainings. So we put things in the budget, but what would be ideal is if somebody was coordinating that. Which second level trainings do we want to run in 2019? When do they, when do we want to hold them and where? So, we need somebody to coordinate that kind of stuff so that we're not, stepping on each other's toes. I started to do that from a budget perspective as it relates to the NWTAs. So this year we're going to do 5 NWTAs, and they're not going to, overlap. Want to be in January, want to be in March, want to be in April, want to be in September, want to be in October. So they're spread out through the year a little better than they were this year. And we need somebody to do that for the second level trainings. So really, my question to you guys is, what do you want to know about positions? For example, if you think you might be willing to do something, I can send you what we'll call a sort of mini job description. So we've got those, and so you would know what you're getting yourself in for. It's important that people step up if we're going to keep up the energy, if we're going to really accomplish some things, if we're going to grow the whole area, if we're going to grow a given community, and we can make things better and better. When I was in grade school, some nun said, good, better, best, never let it rest. Tell your good is better and your better is your best. So, each year we want to try to improve, and the thing that's going to make that happen is if we have good people in all our areas. So I'm really complete unless somebody has questions.
So Bob, I do have a question. I have a couple.
Okay.
This is Bill Dodge from Grand Rapids, Michigan. And I was just talking to Les Vanderhorst this morning, kind of about this in preparation for this meeting. I kind of would like to understand how this all sort of breaks down from where we used to be to where we are. This is what I mean. In what we have been calling MidAmerica North, we have an area steward, Greg. Les is our administrator, and I am what's considered to be the lead elder. What I'm assuming from all of our discussion is that somehow this is sort of becoming like mashed potatoes all together here, and we are sort of melding everything together. So for instance, I don't know what happens, like say when you step down, I don't know if that means Les steps up, because I'm training to do what Les was doing. But if Les isn't doing anything, it doesn't make any sense for me to train. Second question, I know this is a lot all at once, but if you can explain the differentiation. The other piece of it for me is we're having an elder retreat at the end of October, and part of that elder retreat includes electing a new lead elder for the next year or two. And so it's a tradition that we've had when we were divided up into smaller areas. I wonder if that's even necessary any longer.
Well, I can give you my vision of where we're going. So where we were is that we were for what we're calling legacy areas.
Right.
We have taken those 4 legacy areas and melded them together. Now, our vision is something that's down the path. Such an animal. However, that's okay for the time being.
Okay.
When you talk about the elders, for example, ideally, all the elders from all 4 of those legacy areas, it'd be a good idea if someday they meet on a regular basis. I mean, this could be a Zoom thing, so they could meet monthly, they could meet, every other month or something, but they get together and as a group decide what the elders are going to look like in the MidAmerica area. So right now we're still sort of separated and we're doing 4 separate things. You guys are going to have an elder retreat. The Louisville community, Kentucky, had an elder retreat in April. So we're still doing our elder retreat. Now, there's nothing wrong, since we're such a big area, that we can't have 2 elder retreats. But, what we ought to do is advertise those for the whole community so that, if Tennessee, for example, doesn't do that, they could come to the Kentucky one. If Indiana doesn't have one, they could go to the Central Great Lakes one. But eventually, we'd like to see the elders become a group that decides what they want to look like in our area. Same thing with LKS. Same thing with the legal body. So we're working towards that. Now that's a big overview. I don't know. Does that answer your question?
Well, basically, except for this. The way that I see it is that perhaps when we get together and talk about these things at our elder retreat, we'll bring this all up and say, look, this is the direction we're going. How do you want to handle it for the future? What do you want us to look like? And we already are inviting and have invited people from all over the area, including Canada, to our retreat, and that's been very successful. And I assume that that part of Canada that's been a part of us still is. I don't know. But at any rate, and so the other question I have, though, is about the administrator position, because that's something that Les and I had talked about. And I think that's got to be a little bit tighter, I would imagine, because of what it is.
Yeah, and once again, someday, if the title is right, area administrator, it would be an area thing. And right now, we sort of have area administrators in different parts of our legacy area, but someday there would be one, and we just got to work towards that. And what's it look like? And it's sort of like our NWTAs. We got a lot of differences in there. We charge different amounts. We charge the staff fees happen to be the same, but one area charges MOS guys and the other doesn't. And so, where should we be consistent and where does it really not matter? Those are all things that will be worked out in time, but eventually, we want to have meetings like this where we can talk about those kinds of things and what does the area want to look like. That's our choice, really. So it's up to us, how we want to be structured and, how we want to run things. And we're working towards it, and we're getting there. And you don't want to jam something down somebody's throat. Say,
of course,
this is the way it's going to be. That never works.
And so the last thing I would say, I guess we're not going to change our T-shirts yet.
No,
we're still going to have them still say MidAmerica North on them. It came really close after I talked with Scotty, who said, you don't exist anymore. So
yeah. So he's technically right, and you can technically tell him.
I'll technically tell him we're still going to do it. So that's awesome.
Yeah. I hope that made sense.
Yeah, it's very helpful. It allays a lot of fears, actually, because people are going to feel like something's getting jammed down their throats when really we're not trying to do that. And it's helpful to hear that from you, Bob, especially.
Well, and, we would encourage people to attend our council meetings. We meet twice a month, the first and third Thursday of every month. And people who are interested in what's going on and would like to be a part of shaping what we do are certainly invited to attend those meetings. Some people just roll their eyes when you talk about administrative stuff, for lack of a better term, and other people, like that kind of stuff. So yeah, we'd encourage people to listen to what we talk about on those council meetings.
Okay, that's awesome. Thanks.
Other questions? And, and there's always that. I don't know. I think it's a power thing. So, for example, I'll talk about the elders, not necessarily to pick on you guys, but, the elders in the North have been doing things a certain way, and there's that certain, well, we want to keep doing this.
We like to call that the right way.
Yeah. And it can become a both and somewhere down the road.
Right.
Well, here's the challenge there that I see. I think it's great that MidAmerica North has its own elder retreat. I think it's great that Kentucky has its own elder retreat, and the invitations go back and forth, and they'll go a long ways for someone to drive from Traverse City or Grand Rapids or Lansing or Kalamazoo all the way to Western Kentucky for an elder retreat. So we've got some dynamics, some challenges, and
Well, that's a perfect reason, in my view, to have two of them, one up there and one down here.
But the question becomes who coordinates and that kind of thing. I mean,
Yeah.
It's a matter of who's on first.
Yeah, well, and my view would be eventually if the elders met, frequently, there's a chair that runs the elder meeting in the north, and there's another chair that runs it in the south. But you don't do them on the same weekend, and blah blah blah. So all that stuff can be worked out.
Sure.
And if the group is meeting, then they can keep from stepping on each other's toes. We are a big area, and geographically, it makes sense. Well, we've got 5 weekends. That's a lot. And we want to make sure we don't do them on the same weekend. Yeah, Alan.
That's the question. Yeah, I'm wondering about the communications from the area. In other words, maybe it's happening, I'm not seeing it, but this group of officers for the area, and you meet twice a month. If we could get a summary, I don't mean attached minutes, but like a summary of what's happening so that we hear what's going on. I don't really see, I read a lot of email, but I'm not following. Maybe it's because I'm not looking at the right emails. But I just feel like it'd be good to have a lot of communication to all of us in the area, not the whole group on everybody's listserv, Memphis all the way up to Michigan, so that we see you. I think that would be helpful to me. I'm just speaking for myself.
Yeah, there's 1,900 people on our info list. So we send periodically. We send monthly. I put the budget out. Where we are. Twice a month, I put out the minutes of the council meetings. I'm not sure why you're not seeing those. And sometimes we still send them to the legacy chat list. So I'm painfully aware that, if you do a survey in any organization, what do you want to see? The number one thing is always more communication. So, we need to do more communication.
It might be a different way than here are the minutes, but here are the exciting things that are going to happen, things that touch our heart.
Yeah.
The minutes are like head trip for me. You know what I'm saying? That's how I am. I don't know.
So Marco is in charge of communication, but what Marco needs is people to send him stuff and say, hey, can you put this out so that people know what's going on? Marco also, I'm speaking for him, but I know that he would like to have, help in that area. So, there you go. There's an opportunity to step up.
Marco is here, our communications lead. Alan, Marco, do you want to put anything in from your role about this?
Just simply that I'm going to be putting out a survey soon with a goal of being very, very specific about who gets what information when, just to make sure that you're getting stuff that's relevant. So that's something that's in the works. Once I have an idea what we really need, I would definitely love help putting it all in place.
What does help look like, Marco, so the guys get a good idea of what you want?
Well, I think that's going to solidify more as I learn more. But if I were to guesstimate right now, it's going to be about helping connect in your local areas with iGroups to make sure that people get the information they need.
Yeah, we've had lots of conversations around communication. We one, don't want to overburden people with stuff. So, for example, if Memphis is going to have a picnic, the likelihood that somebody from Michigan is going to drive down and attend that is pretty slim. And the guy from Michigan probably don't want to see that kind of communication. The communication that we want, you know, to go to everybody is something that's applicable to everybody as opposed to local things. And it's, you know, it's a hard apple to slice about, you know, how far you want to send something.
I'm mindful, Bob, that we're a few minutes into our interactive time, and it's a nice transition. We're already doing it. I just want to know if you're complete with your piece.
I am.
Okay, thanks a lot. One of the like Bob was saying earlier, fellas, one of the purposes of this meeting is for us to address, just as a group of men, any resistance that you are feeling toward this thing called the MidAmerica area. Bill Dodge modeled that really well. And I want to just open the conversation more. What concerns do you have? What questions do you have? And also I want to say, as we get into that, Paul Samuelson, I forgot to introduce you. My apologies, Paul, at the beginning of the meeting. Paul's our chair-elect for MKP USA. He's going to be sitting as chair next year. Paul's from Whidbey Island, Washington, which is in the Seattle area, and he has been, for the last 2-3 years or more, immersed in the Northwest area, which is a very similar area to ours. It's really spread out. It's very large, and they went through the same process that we are going through right now, as has the South Central area, another model we've been looking to, and all the transition those guys went through. Both areas are really stable now and pretty healthy now. Paul, I know you're not feeling well, and I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us. Can you add anything to this before we get into more questions about what the Northwest has experienced?
You know, I don't feel well, so if I cough 5 times while I'm talking, you'll understand. I really don't. What I can say is that I've not experienced what I'm experiencing right now. The level of organization, there's 32 men on this call, all with great spirits and great attitudes, all with a curiosity. Everyone, almost everyone, checked in with joy. And so what I see is in the leadership, and those who will be in the leadership, which are people here, because you're in the leadership if you're in this call of some form, really have the spirit that's necessary to move it forward. I do think, as Bob said, the complexity of changing from where you were to where you are, which also means where are we going, can be complicated. We've all experienced that. I think it's really, really important that you stay connected, you stay in communication. And Rick, there's many of these kinds of meetings you can have on some schedule is really useful and really helpful. The Northwest, on the elder piece, the Northwest has had over the years, because of its size, had 3 different elder weekends away, because there would be one in Southern Oregon, one in the Portland area, which is Northern Oregon, one in Northern Washington. So there's all kinds of ways to deal with that. I think keeping communities, keeping their own connection and identity to who they are while they blend into the area as a whole is also important, and that's also happened. But I see it all happening now. I see the desire to work together and the pride in where you are and have been. So I don't know if that was much to share, other than I'm really encouraged and touched by if nothing else, the number of people on this call. And what makes it all the best is that the spirit in this group is really positive, and I really appreciate that. So I'll be in with that.
Thanks, Paul.
So let me say,
I'm going to check out pretty soon, Rick, if you all don't mind.
Okay.
Okay. Let me say one more thing about the Northwest that impressed the hell out of me. The Northwest, and this has been a few years ago, so the data might be a little off, but it'll be close. They had 106 I groups, and everybody in those I groups invites somebody else to sit in them. And so, you know, sometimes they have 3 uninitiated men in each I group, or 4. And then when they have a weekend, you know, they've got 400 people who are prime candidates. You know, that's why they fill their weekends, because they've got that culture of invitation. Everybody in the I group appreciates being in an I group. They're getting something out of it. And so they want to have their friends sit in an I group. And of course, when they do that, you know, they are candidates for a weekend. So if we could create, we've got 62 I groups. So if we had 3 or 4 guys sitting in every I group, we could fill our weekends as well. And fill is a relative term, you know, anywhere from 32 to 40 is usually what the Northwest has. So, you know, we can do that. Why can't we do that? But we got to have that culture of invitation. I'm in.
Let me give you a little small piece on the side to that. That's how I got engaged and involved in MKP. I was I was invited to an I group as an uninitiated man. I was in that I group for a little bit over a year before I got initiated. So there's power in that, and that was on the edge when most I groups were closed. So that's how I got here.
Yeah.
Great topic.
Guys, yeah, I'd really like to hear some questions or some ideas from the guys that aren't on the council. So if we could spend more time on that, I'd really appreciate it.
I was just moving right there. Thanks, Steve. And Bob brought up a great topic that Paul backed up, which is what I mentioned earlier in the meeting, culture of invitation. If we have time for that, we'll circle back around to it. But yeah, for the guys who aren't on the council here, what are your questions? What are your concerns about this thing called MidAmerica area? Please, guys, help us out here. Start talking.
Mike Everhard, Greater Detroit. I guess my concern is its size. I met a few of you, not very many. So there's not that familiarity. And I don't have a problem trusting you, man, because I know you're warrior brothers, but I don't know. There's just feels like something's not quite touchy-feely, which is the way I like it, I guess. That's my concern. It's not a big concern, but that's my concern.
Answer that, Rick.
Hear you, Mike. Who's next?
Hey, Rick, can I give an answer to that for him?
Yeah, go for it.
You know, I agree with you, Mike. And so what I did is I'm down here in Memphis. I have registered and I'll be staffing Greater Lakes weekend in a couple weeks. So, and I did that for the fact I want to go up there and see what you all do, how you do it, and meet you all. So how we do that is you all, you know, when we start doing weekends here in Memphis, come down to Memphis or to Louisville or wherever it is. And that way we'll start cross-breeding and we'll get to meet each other. That's how I do. I agree with you 100%. And that's what I did to get that. So.
Good for you. I've been planning on doing that here and there, and it just I never seem to follow through.
Yeah, and eventually we'll have more guys staffing, and there'll be a bigger mixture. And when the North, who doesn't exist, according to Scotty Krabler, when you guys have a weekend, sooner or later we're gonna get a bigger mix of people from Indy, Louisville, Memphis, start getting involved. Are MOSing, and the reverse of that when we have a weekend down here. But I think, it's inevitable that you're going to be closer to the people in your community. You can go and have coffee, you can go and have lunch and all the rest of that. So you're always going to be closer to those. But, you you do know that you have brothers elsewhere.
I have a question. I hope I haven't exhausted my time, but I wonder if communication, okay? So I'm not sure how I would ever find out about your council meetings, and I'm not sure if, for instance, if I want to advertise something like the Elder Retreat, do I know the right lists to put it on to make sure somebody, say, in central Indiana, and I've invited David Bird up to be one of the speakers, knows about this event when I start to advertise it. So how do I get the permission to be on the lists and that kind of thing too?
Let's have Marco chime in on that. I really want him to take these kind of questions.
Okay.
Trial by fire, Marco.
Oh, no worries. You just beat me to the unmute button. Basically, one of the goals for the communications committee is really to answer that exact question. How do we communicate with exactly who we need to? For the moment, if you have something to share out, feel free to reach out to me. I know Scotty is available, but he is super hyper busy doing all of the areas. I'm a little more local and I have a little more idea what's going on in our area, so I'll do my best to help you how I can. But I'm really hoping that by the end of this year, we've got something solid in place that everyone is aware of. The MidAmerica site will hopefully be a little more reliable in having up-to-date content, and you'll know where you can send stuff.
I'm just thinking email lists and that kind of thing, because I know sometimes I don't even, if I'm on a weekend, I don't even get on the MOS list, and sometimes I want to communicate with them and blah, blah, blah. There's all these V groups and lists and so forth. So, thanks.
Yep, you're welcome.
David, I know you've been passionate about communications for a long time. Do you have anything to put in?
Well, the whole goal of forming an area was that the USA was too large for us all to know what was going on when that's thousands of miles away. And that having a training center in each city put a lot of a burden on each city to have a coordinator who could run weekends and admin who could do the money around the weekends and all that. So the idea of it was an attempt at right sizing to where it wouldn't be all MKP USA or North America. It would be something that has worked out well for South Central and I believe Northwest, where no, you don't know everybody on the far end of the area, but your community, your city is just cooking with all sorts of things that are great that aren't admin or money or that sort of thing. So, it's a trade-off, and this is what we're trying to do.
I have a question.
I have a question too.
Tony's been waiting, and then let's go to you, Mike. Go ahead, Tony.
Yeah, my issue with the whole merging of all these communities has, just like with any other small business that eventually becomes large, there becomes a lot of connection and authenticity that gets lost, just like it's predicated in this meeting here. We're talking about jobs and work and all this other stuff. We're not really haven't even really gotten to connection with each other or connection to the communities. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. It could be me. I just haven't felt it. So when we grow and when we become a corporate structure, what I feel we're going to lose a lot of authentic and small ground knit community support because we're so worried about getting work done and jobs being filled and roles being established and work getting done and weekends being done that we're going to lose track of what we're doing this for, which is, what my judgment is, for the next man. For the ones who came before us, for the ones who are going to come tomorrow, for our children, for the men in the world that can be authentic and true and cry because it's okay, not because they're told, I don't know, man. So that's my biggest issue with going big and larger structure is because we potentially could lose a lot of our heart. So I'm in with that.
Michael, do you want to answer him or do you got a question?
No, I'd like to answer him and kind of chime in. I mean, I've been around for almost 20 years now, and that archetype that you speak to, Tony, is the volunteer archetype that lives in all of us, and those people on the board recognize that there's a balance, the corporate nonprofit that protects your ability to be passionate about what you do. And so, you know, yeah, to be a leader in your community is to balance both of those things, and to worry about money and insurance and all that stuff. That's the burden of leadership that Rick is carrying right now. Thank you.
Well, and there are area roles and there are community roles. You know, the community has its own, you know, what does Indy want to do? What kind of events do you want to do? You get to choose. So, you know,
we're all microcosms. Nothing has changed. I mean, we're all still the same communities we were. And it's just linked together by, you know, one moniker to try and actually minimize the amount of energy that goes into each and every community. Rather than having 5 center directors, we just have one central leadership core, and that allows community leaders to do what they want to do and what they're capable of doing.
And at the same time, Tony, Mike, Bill, all of you, bring your passion. This work is about the passion. And some of us, we do the drudge work, yes. It's necessary to keep the whole framework together, but it's all about the passion. Keep bringing it. I want to see it.
Mike Eberhard, you had a question or a concern?
It's really a curiosity about South Central. I was wondering if all of their NWTAs were at Land of the Grandfathers. So that I see as a helpful way for all the communities to come together and work together and know each other. Yeah, that's an awareness.
I'm not sure, but I think they had a NWTA in New Orleans. So the answer would be no, not all of them, but they do a lot of them there.
They're all there now, Bob.
Are they?
Yep, they're all there now.
And just as an aside, Mike, Richard Torres is the area administrator there, I believe. He's actually in a pay position. And I plan to reach out to Richard he's counseled with us before. I'd like to bring him in again because they're as close to what we're going through as I think exists. Yeah.
They're way ahead of us because they have this central location of Land of my grandfathers, where they have built facilities to do the NWTAs and other trainings, and as a result, they have guys coming from Gulfport, Mississippi to North Texas, all gathering at Land of my grandfathers for event after event. So they've got a history there that we don't have yet.
Well, and they're 2 years older. So in 2 years, you know, who knows where we'll be? We'll be a better organization 2 years down the road because, you know, I just believe that'll happen.
I want to keep us on time. We're getting into our next piece here. Jack's going to do a call to action. I'd like to take 1 or 2 more questions real quick. This is good. And yes, Alan, please go ahead.
I just wonder, does the MidAmerica Council have a mission, a published mission statement that kind of speaks to heart and soul and business, you know, like what you're about? Is there some form missions? I don't recall it, and that's just, maybe I missed it, but just
we do not have one, Alan. We do not have a mission statement in the MidAmerica Stewardship Council.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I would encourage you to look at that.
Thank you. We sure will. Somebody else? Anybody else?
I got a question.
Rick, go for it.
Thank you. I'm new to all this. I'm still trying to get my feet under me about all the technology and terminology and all that. I guess my biggest question is, what is the purpose? What are we hoping to achieve by combining all these versus what we had before?
I'll take a shot at that. Just real quick, it's been mentioned a couple times. Rick, is David used the word right sizing. Other guys have used the word creating efficiencies. I would say economy of scale. Rather than have multiple communities or what we used to call training centers doing the same job and duplicating effort, we're trying to roll it as other areas have done, like the Northwest, like South Central. We're trying to roll them into a core body so that communities can spend more time doing less drudgery work, more time making connections like Tony Longobardi was talking about a minute ago. That's a big piece. It's not everything, Rick, but that's probably the biggest piece that we're talking about.
All right, I got that. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to move us to our next piece. Jack's got something, and then we're going to go from Jack to Marco, who's going to check us out.
All right. A couple of nights ago, one thing that GCL does really good is when they do a weekend, they do 15 weeks of bringing initiates to the weekend. And the last one was on, Joe brought up that he was talking to somebody and he wanted to go. However, his wife didn't want him to go. So what I want to propose and what I want to start doing is we start doing open circles, and we make them co-ed open circles, which means wives, girlfriends come, whomever, boyfriends, whatever, and get them to see what we're doing, because in the past, MKP has done some stupid things to where I've had people come to me and say, you all run naked in the woods and you teach men to hate their mothers. And I say, no, that's not what it's about. So by getting them to doing these open circles, we can start building an I group, which is a co-ed. Now we have to do co-ed groups. However, part of the time they work together as a team, and for the rest, they break up into male and female, and then they work on themselves and come back. So the women will understand what we do, and they won't be so intimidated by, oh, he's going to go become a man and whatever. So my suggestion is that we do co-ed open circles. And 3 things. And we use 3 things on it. We use what I don't want you to know about me.
I got all these people on
me and my story. That's it. By the time that gets finished, you'll start building a trust within that group that you can bring it off and bring it off different groups. And we can bring in women within.
Yeah, 9 o'clock.
Women that work really well for the women to learn and do their thing, and we do our thing. So
I'm sorry, somebody needs to mute because you keep on getting talked over and can't hardly catch what you're saying there, Jack.
All right, well, I'm good at talking again, so I can repeat. Basically,
no, don't need you to repeat. We heard you.
All right,
Jack,
Let's go. Move on.
Jack.
Who is that?
Ed Barton.
Hey, Ed.
Joe Daly and I were involved in a co-ed circle in Kalamazoo at the UU Church that Joe's I group started, and it went for 5 years. Now, the one thing that I saw that was a challenge was when both the husband and the wife were in the circle together. That tends to put an impediment into completely open conversation on how one or the other feels. So just a heads up, you've got that challenge, and yes, co-ed circles can work.
Understood. Thank you for the feedback. And that's what I need to know what we need to do. So when we start doing these, we can put that in there. However, instead of just leaving it for MKP or NWTAs, let's bring something in there for the women to do. Like I said, either women within.
I do have a comment. Matt Chestnut, Cincinnati. Our community has constructed a number of co-ed circles as an outreach event involving the Mankind Project, often Women Within, and the Priestess Movement as a way to support community connection following the NWTA. So we kind of have it structured that there are open circles leading up to the weekend, and then a homecoming, and then a co-ed group following that, and we found that it's really enhancing the sense of community. Paul, do you want to comment on that as well?
Paul might be muted.
Maybe not. Yeah.
Paul might be muted. I think Paul's on the phone.
Anyway, we're having a you know, it's a good thing so far. We've done about 4 of them. We're going to do more.
I just want to get back to Rick a little bit. Rick, did you get the information that you needed that you missed from that multiple people talking over Jack? Or
Yeah, I'm good, man. I got enough of it. I got a piece of it. Thank you.
Okay, cool.
Okay, fellas. We got to move to checkout. Marco, it looks like you got 12 minutes to work with. That's awesome. And hey, guys, let's do this again. I think this is really fruitful, and we're gonna work on this sort of come up with the next date. Maybe we do one of these once a quarter or something like that. We're not sure yet, but great job, everybody. And it's awesome to have the turnout that we've had. And before we move to checkout, I just want to remind Stewardship Council members, please stay on for a debrief after the meeting's over so we can kind of see how we did here. Marco, it's all yours.
All right, I just want to let everyone know that I'm going to be stopping the recording for chat.